Hey there everyone, I'm Ashley Willington and you're watching The Campfire. It's our Inside High School sports show. We break down districts from around the greater Houston area. This week we are deep diving into 10 5A Division II. So we've broken down the private school ranks, small schools, and now it's time that we get into each individual district from around the greater Houston area. This week we're deep diving into 10 5A Division II, and these are the teams that you'll be seeing in this district after realignment.
Bryan Rudder, A&M Consolidated, Huntsville, Lamar Fulshire, Montgomery, Montgomery Lake Creek, and Lamar Consolidated.
District 10 5A Division II is an interesting one, as you have teams like Huntsville and A&M Consolidated who are solidified as the powerhouses in the high school ranks, and then teams like Lake Creek and Fulshire who are trying to make a name for themselves in their third year of varsity programs. It's time now for our film session, presented by your local Geico offices in Cypress, Katy, Spring, and Pearland.
District 10 5A Division II remains similar to what it's looked like the past 2 years. Huntsville, Lamar Consolidated, Montgomery, and Montgomery Lake Creek join Bryan Rudder and A&M Consolidated as holdovers in this very competitive league. Fulshire moves up from Class 4A Division I, while Cleveland and Katy Paetow both departed for 5A Division I. Lamar Consolidated and Huntsville finished in a second-place tie last season, and both look to challenge defending district champion A&M Consolidated for the crown this season. Lamar Consolidated picked up the program's first playoff win in more than a decade, but the Mustangs must replace a number of key pieces, including head coach Rick LaFavors, who is now at Ridgepoint. Also gone is running back Tay McWilliams, who is headed to Waco to play at Baylor. Look for junior Rayshawn Glover to fill that role for the Mustangs in 2020. Huntsville won the district title in 2018, and the Hornets look to ride a stingy defense again in 2020. Huntsville held district opponents to an average of just 4 points a game in 2018, and just 12 a contest last season. However, the Hornets will need to replace much of its offense productively this fall to return to the top of the district standings. Fulshire is set to begin its third season of varsity football. While the Chargers football program has won just 3 games thus far, the Fulshire athletic department has experienced some early success in other sports, and it could just be a matter of time until Fulshire becomes a force on the gridiron. Much like Fulshire, Montgomery Lake Creek is a young program that has some promise. Look for Lake Creek to continue to ascend as the Lions improved from 2-8 their first season to 4-6 a year ago, including a win over crosstown rival Montgomery in last year's finale. Montgomery reached the playoffs in 2018 but struggled to a 2-8 campaign with a young roster last fall. The Bears will look to bounce this year behind junior quarterback Brock Bolfing, who already has 2 years of starting experience under his belt.
And special teams are made up of special players. We take a look at some of those players from District 10 5A Division II in our segment Players on the Rise, presented by Grimaldi's Pizzeria.
Rashawn Glover is a running back for Lamar Consolidated. The 2022 graduate, as a sophomore, played in 11 games for the Mustangs, and in those games he had 500 total yards and 6 touchdowns. Montgomery running back Adavion Johnson solidified himself as a key force of the Bears' offensive game. As a junior, Johnson played in 9 games for Montgomery and had 129 carries with almost 100 yards per game. Huntsville defenseman Sebastian Patterson is going to get his time to shine. In the 2019 season, Patterson was voted 10 5A second team All-District. The defensive end was a tackling machine through his junior year. Chance Neisner is on the offensive line for Montgomery Lake Creek. In the 2019 season, he was voted first team All-District. Jackson Edge is a full sheer 3-sport athlete, playing baseball, basketball, and as a dual-threat quarterback for the Chargers. The junior averaged almost 20 rushing yards per game and 135 passing.
And those players are great on the gridiron. But do you know somebody from the high school sports scene who's doing great in your community? Nominate them for our Chevy Spotlight, a player, coach, or team going the extra mile for those in their area. To nominate, go to IHSSChevySpotlight.com, and throughout the summer, we'll be picking nominations to highlight on our social media channels. Now it's time to talk to the coaches who lead their teams to victory in our Media Day segment. First up, we have head coach of the Lake Creek Lions, Pat Kennedy, on with us. Coach, how you doing?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. We'll talk a little bit about your district now. In the 5A Division II, y'all are in District 10. What are some of the teams that you guys are playing week in, week out, and the competition look like that Lake Creek has to go up against every single week?
Well, so they realigned us in February, and the last 2 years we played the other new school, Fulser, and then all of a sudden they're in our district. So going into this football season, we at Lake Creek have played everybody that came to our district. Head and shoulders above everybody as A&M Consolidated. Coach Fedora does a great job, has great kids. They're very athletic. So they're head and shoulders above everybody. Huntsville, Coach Southern, he lost quite a few seniors. But Coach Southern, I first met Coach Southern when he was at Copper's Cove. So it is a very good football coach. So they'll be very good in the district. Lamar Consolidated will be getting a new head coach. With Coach LaFavors going to Ridge Point. I don't know if they've named the coach yet. Then you're looking at Montgomery, and then us, and then Fulser. Fulser is a new school. They're a year older. They're a year older than us. Coach Fleming does a great job. They'll be better. And then Rudder always seems to be, to me, the wild card. They got a really good quarterback. Coach Izar does a good job with them. I think they were 5-5 last year, and they're really extremely athletic. So our district overall is athletic, and our district overall is pretty competitive, with probably A&M Consolidated being the head and shoulders. And that's where I keep trying to tell our kids, it's nice to beat Montgomery. It's nice to beat so and so, but we want to be where A&M Consolidated is, and that's the goal. We want when people talk on radios, we want them to say, well, the best team in the district, or the best two teams in the district are, A&M Consolidated and Lake Creek. That's where we're trying to get to. So that's kind of our district in a nutshell.
And what's it going to take for your team to either win the district or to make one of those playoff spots in the 2020 season?
Well, after last year, I would say it takes staying healthy. That's the number one thing. If we can stay healthy through district play, we have a very good chance of picking up one of those 4 spots. As far as, I think what's going to happen is depending on how long this quarantine is, coaches are going to be scrambling to pick it back up. And there's going to be a lot of, in my opinion, if we don't pick it back up until August, there's going to be a lot of issues that come up during the football season, like strength and conditioning, that injuries could go up, all those things. So you're going to have to stay lucky as far as being healthy all the way through. Those things are going to come up. So I believe if we can stay healthy, we'll have a very good chance to get one of those 4 spots.
I have the producer of Chevy's Inside High School Sports, Robert Sheik, on. Robert, I miss you. I haven't seen you in so long.
Yeah, this is social distancing at its finest, right?
You're usually right down the hall. But let's talk a little bit about 10-5A Division 2. This seems to be a district where it's kind of mixed, where you have these teams who are really well solidified kind of pillars of the Texas high school sports scene, and then you have some newcomers on the scene with Lake Creek and Fulshire that are going into just their third year. How do you kind of see the district playing out with teams that it's on such like a broad spectrum?
Yeah, this might be one of the more interesting districts to kind of look at from the greater Houston area, just because there's so much unexpected. For one thing, not all these teams, there are some districts where it's basically the same 8 teams as last year. This is not like that at all. We're seeing a program like Fulshire that's a very young program moving up from Class 4A to 5A. And the Chargers have taken some lumps early on, but this is about the time we've started to see a lot of other young programs, especially in that area, in that kind of Fort Bend County area, start to break loose. And so we've seen Fulshire do it in other sports too, which is always a good thing. And then there's another program like that, Montgomery Lake Creek. Same thing. We saw the boys basketball program at Lake Creek make a run to regionals this past year in basketball. Now the question is, when does the football team start to break out? And we've seen some signs from these teams. So now it's just kind of a matter of, can they take the next step and really compete? And then, as you mentioned, there's some really big, strong programs there in this district as well. Huntsville, definitely one of those that comes to mind. And then Lamar Consolidated, it'll be interesting to see. That's a team I'm just interested to see. Anytime you go through a coaching change, a big breakout year this past year for that program. Basically the best season since Lamar Consolidated won state a couple of years ago, or a couple of decades ago. I think it's about 2007, I believe it was. But so now a coaching change. A lot of seniors graduated from Lamar Consolidated, so we'll see what that program has coming back, and it's really going to be interesting because and as we talk about it today and looking on what these teams have done in the past, might be completely different than what we sit here in 2 years from now, even say, not just next year, but also, they'll be grouped together for 2 years. How that will shape out over the next 2 years will be very interesting for sure.
So Robert, you mentioned it, as Lamar Consolidated head coach Rick LaFavors is now at Bridgepoint. You've been around high school football and high school sports so much longer than I have. What have you seen from programs, and how do you see them being able to, or how are programs able to kind of keep that momentum even when they lose when they lose their head coach? Yeah,
and a lot of that, it can go any number of ways. A lot of it matters on what type of players are coming back and stuff like that. And we're seeing a big senior class leave for Lamar Consolidated. I know I just saw this. I think it was just in the last couple of days as we're recording this that the new head coach was named. I don't have his name offhand. My apologies for that, but I know I'm touching on it, I'm sure, at some point in this. But, there's this old saying in high school sports, just tradition never graduates. And that's very true. And it also just doesn't leave when a head coach leaves. So Coach LaFavors did a remarkable job there, rebuilding that program, turning that ship around. And you have to like where that program is headed. That's an area that we've seen some really good athletes come out of that school district in general, the LCC ISD and Lamar Consolidated. LCISD. I guess I threw in one too many C's in there. The Lamar Consolidated Independent School District. C.D. Lamb got drafted in the first round out of Foster last week. So many of these big type superstar athletes come out of that district. We've seen Division I players come out of that Lamar Consolidated program. NFL players come out of that Lamar Consolidated program in the past. Tay McWilliams, the running back headed to Baylor from last year's team, was the big one off last year's team. But there were a number of other key players that were also seniors. But those guys definitely sort of set a climate there that will be passed down to those younger players, the guys who will take the reins this year.
Robert, Coach, thank you so much for coming on with us on the Campfire. Good luck to the Lake Creek Lions in the 2020 season. We have a couple of messages from our sponsors and a trivia question for you.
This week's District 10-5A Division II trivia question. Which high school was a filming location for the movie Apart? A. Huntsville, B. Montgomery, C. Bryan Rudder, or D. Lamar Consolidated? The answer when we return.
Chevrolet Inside High School Sports is brought to you by your Houston area Chevy dealers. Visit your nearest dealer to test drive our award-winning products. The film session is presented by your local Geico offices in Cypress, Katy, Spring, and Pearland. To get more information or a quote, go to geico.com/Houston. The Players on the Rise is presented by Grimaldi's Coal Brick Oven Pizzeria. Grimaldi's Pizzeria is open for carry-out and delivery. Visit grimaldispizzeria.com.
Welcome back to the Campfire. This week's trivia question, which high school was a filming location for the movie Apart? A. Huntsville, B. Montgomery, C. Bryan Rudder, or D. Lamar Consolidated? If you answered D. Lamar Consolidated, you're correct.
I don't think I've actually ever seen the movie Apart, but I'm gonna have to go check it out now. So maybe I'll see some Lamar Consolidated staples as I'm watching it. Now it's time for the district breakdown. Our Inside High School Sports insider, Matt Harris, is on with us to break down District 10-5A Division II. Matt, over to you.
Thanks, Ashley. This week we're going to be previewing 5A Division II District 10. We'll start with Lamar Fulshear, who's moving up from 4A Division I. For Lamar Fulshear, they went 1-9 last season, but were led by quarterback Jackson Edge, who's just a sophomore. He was back for his next 2 seasons and has garnered Division I interest at a height of 6'3". Now, if the Chargers want to make the playoffs in 2020, look to Edge to be the guy to get them there. For Montgomery, they went 2-8 last season, but they graduated talent across the board from 2018. In 2020, they'll bring back a lot of young talent, including quarterback Brock Bolfing and star running back Jalen Washington, who ran for more than 1,200 yards as a freshman 2 seasons ago and increased on that production last season. The Bears could look to take advantage of the smaller district to potentially secure a playoff spot. Lake Creek played varsity football for the first time in 2018, 2 seasons ago. They went 2-8 in their debut season before going 4-6 last year. If they can double their win total again, they should make the playoffs. They'll return quarterback Ty Sexton and his top target, tight end Dayton Sweeting, and could potentially make the playoffs as well. Next up is the 2 teams that I think will be 1-2 in the district. Lamar Consolidated had a great year in 2019, going 9-3, but they'll miss coach Rick LaFavors, a friend of the show, who's on to Fort Bend Ridgepoint. They'll also miss running back Tay McWilliams, who's off to Baylor, and quarterback BJ Harris. So they are going to miss a lot of depth and some great coaching, but Lamar Consolidated has been a mainstay at the top of the district standings the last 2 years, and I see the same happening in 2020. The last team on the list is Huntsville. I think Huntsville will once again win district. They won district the last 2 years, but like Lamar Consolidated, they'll be losing some talent as well. Quarterback Matthew Southern is gone, as well as dynamic receiver Tyreek Carter. But they'll return wideout Justin Butcher to lead a young team in 2020. I think Huntsville will once again look to make a deep playoff run as they bowed out to Fort Bend Marshall in the last 2 playoffs. Obviously, Marshall went on to the state championship game each of the last 2 seasons, so there's no shame in that. With talent graduating at Marshall as well, look for Huntsville to potentially go deeper in the playoffs in 2020. Thanks, Ashley. Back to you.
That's all we have for this week's episode of The Campfire. Come back every Monday for a new show. Next week, we'll be deep diving into District 11 5A Division II. Until then, follow our social platforms. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And on those, we'll be breaking down District 10 5A Division II with original content brought to you every single day. Until next time, I'm Ashley Bullington, and thank you so much for watching The Campfire.